morning. My name is Fred Combs, and I'd like to welcome you to the February meeting of the Lextran Board of Directors. Leading the meeting this morning will be our Board Chair, Mr. Harding Dowell.
Thank you, Fred. We will call the meeting to order and call the roll. Ms. Rogers is as yet absent. Mr. Schoninger?
Here.
Dr. Capo is absent. Mr. Ward?
Present.
Ms. Borges-Gonzalez is absent. Judge Thurston is absent. I don't think I missed anybody, so we do not currently have a quorum. We will continue with the business of the agenda that does not require one, and we'll circle back if Dr. Capo and Ms. Rogers are able to join us. Is there any public comment or public hearing on agenda items? Seeing none, we don't have a quorum to approve the minutes. I do not have a chair's report, so we will move straight into the monthly performance report and financials. Ms. Elliott.
And so while Emily is getting set up, I've been meeting with board members one-on-one, and one of the ideas that came out of that meeting was to have a slide that has 5 key talking points. So this is something that we've not seen yet, but happy to hear your feedback and see how it goes. So, Emily.
Thank you. Good morning. We will be going over the performance report for January. We're going to go ahead and start with our mission statement. We serve people and our community with mobility solutions. So for January, we began the calendar year with 324,000 fixed route trips and nearly 14,000 paratransit trips. Our on-time performance did exceed 90% for the month, and that's the first time since July of last year. We were talking a little bit about what may have contributed to that. There's been sort of a change in the construction, which can impact our on-time performance. Some removal of some long-term detours as well, and so we're hoping to see that continue in February as well. 11 of our 13 ramp phase 3 bus stops were completed by the end of the month. We held our paratransit listening sessions in the 3rd week of January, and a compilation of the feedback will be shared with the community soon. I have a little bit of information for you all today. A group of us attended the Mayor's Annual State of the City address at Central Bank Center on the 30th, and then we did receive one commendation for this month for Mr. Bruce Burton. So here's that new slide, and so our fixed route performance is right there in the dead center because we wanted to remind you all that it was above 90%, and we're very proud of that, and we're happy, we're hoping that we can continue that and keep that forward momentum going. Our average weekday ridership for the month was just over 13,000, and then we also have an increase of just over 2 trips per hour on fixed route, more than we had at this point last year. So fixed route ridership is we are continuing to see an increase, and we'll look a little bit more at those ridership numbers. From the paratransit listening sessions, we held 4 in-person sessions. Between our in-person calls, emails, etc., we ended up with 87 total remarks. So that would be questions and comments. The top questions were sort of generalized things. How does X or Y work? I don't understand how to schedule my trip, or why this is different, or that sort of thing. We did have a lot of questions about the bag policy, which we anticipated, and I think we talked about last month. And then we did have a lot of questions about the eligibility process as well. So you can see here, fixed route ridership continues to increase. The dotted line is last year, and the average ridership is the solid gray line. So fixed route ridership was up for both of those over last year and over the 5-year average. Or I'm sorry, not the 5-year average, over the average. Paratransit ridership did have a slight uptick, did increase by 11% compared to January of last year, and we had that large dip last year, so we would expect an increase there, but it continues to do well. Monthly ridership, it did increase. Okay, sorry, I just had a brain blip. So total ridership, as I said, was just over 324,000 trips. and it increased by 4% compared to January of last year. And then we are still for fixed route at 12% higher than year-to-date for fiscal year 2023. Paratransit ridership ended up at 9% higher than fiscal year 2023 as well. And the trips per mile and the trips per hour continue year-to-date to exceed the trips per mile and trips per hour last year on both systems. So for safety, there were 5 preventable accidents in January, and so we talked a little bit about maybe what that was looking at, and it looked like there was some inattention, some things that we are able to review with staff and be able to talk to them about and course correct. There were 4 workers' compensation claims as well, and then of course that did increase the injury frequency rate. So for maintenance, we operated 12,696 miles between road calls in January, and they completed 60 of 60 for their preventative maintenance inspections. I will add, there is one correction that I wanted to note. You have the corrected slide separate for the performance report, and that is for the customer comments. We updated the tracking system that we're using internally for customer comments, and some of the data for February got added into the January information. So all of those numbers are lower for fixed route that were reported in the packet you initially received, and the corrected page is available. So there is a bit of a decrease. For instance, it said the total feedback count was 65, and that was actually 42, and then they're all adjusted from there. Paratransit was corrected as well, because those are pulled from the same system. So we are tracking them better and more efficiently now, but that first month of reporting with that new system, the report got pulled with a portion of February in it as well. I don't believe there's a slide on that. Nope. Does anyone have any questions that I can answer?
Will you go back to your overview of the paratransit highlights? From the listening session?
Here? Yeah.
Yeah. What's this increase per hour?
Mm-hmm.
Will you explain that?
So that's counting the number of trips per hour. So when we look at fiscal year 2023, year to date, there were 17.62 trips. And when we look at now, there's 19.71. So we're seeing a good increase sort of across the trips per hour on the system.
So at any given hour during the operating times, there's about 19 Lextran trips going on,
Yes.
on average.
Yes.
And it's hard for me to know if that's a good number or bad number, or because there's a significant number of vehicles, more than 19 vehicles.
Correct.
But this probably only counts people that are on transit, on route.
What do you mean?
So for example, if a vehicle has no one in, I forget how many vehicles Paratransit has, because we purchased.
This is fixed route.
This is fixed route.
Yeah, this is fixed route. Okay, so we have 19 vehicles at any time. So how did we get 2 more fixed route vehicles at any hour then?
I'm sorry, it's not vehicles, it's trips. So people utilizing the service. So the people that we're counting getting on and off the bus.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
And then down here, your paratransit listening sessions, when it says 87 total remarks, were there 87 people total there, or 87 people that spoke?
So Not everyone spoke at every single one, and I meant to write down how many total people came, and I cannot think of it. I'm happy to get you that
Yeah.
number. This is everything, including what we received from phone calls for people that could not attend, and for folks who emailed who could not attend. So this is 87 total. There were a number of questions. It was about 50-50 questions versus comments, and so we just counted them all as remarks instead of saying comments and then sort of muddling. Yeah.
From each session, it varied in between 13 and 20 some odd folks per session.
We have 4 sessions.
Yes.
One of those 4 was here,
Here.
it's virtual, that we streamed. It wasn't, I mean, it was open to the public, but the public
Correct.
didn't really engage us here, other
No.
than virtually.
Yeah.
And what did we learn?
What did we learn? We learned that the system, we didn't learn that the system had difficulties, but we heard more about the difficulties that people were having. It tracked with the comments that we've been receiving, but we learned that things are improving. We learned that we needed to clarify some information with the eligibility process for the community. We needed to clarify information about the bag policy. The general questions were very across the board, but very much in line with the questions that we've received over time throughout the transition and when we implemented the rider guide. Questions about trip negotiations, that is, people are still struggling to understand how that works. I think we also learned anecdotally that getting in front of people, we know this, but getting in front of people, really, they're getting their questions answered in a more meaningful way. So, I think that the more that we can stand in front of folks and answer their questions, the better it's going to be as far as fair transit is concerned. They may not necessarily be consuming information in the way that fixed route is, and that being in front of them is a really good way to do that.
Is anything changing as a result of what you learned?
So we have clarified a lot with the eligibility process, the information that's available for people we've been updating, and then we've been working on understanding why the bag policy is difficult for people and helping figure out ways that they can make it work for them.
Is it a no bag policy?
It's not a no bag policy. It is a more limited bag policy than previously. But based on the nature of someone's disability, that policy can impact them in sort of a different way. So we're understanding more about how we can support them and the information that they need to know and some clarifications that we need to make. And one of the things that we've been discussing this week is essentially an FAQ that's available that came from this. So what were those frequently asked questions, and answering them and having that sort of available.
When these clarifications are made and distributed, what's the mechanism for distributing them?
So there will be several ways. Getting to those folks at where they are was very good. So getting that information back to the folks where they were and then some will be really important. We will be putting information in Wheels vehicles again. That was a great way. A lot of people heard about that while they were riding. We'll obviously be sharing it digitally for this community. That's not necessarily the most effective way always, but it can stay available to them. But this is the best way to get information to people in a lot of ways, in short of just sending a letter to everyone, which is not 100% effective because of addresses and all of that. Getting it to them, getting information to the organizations that people interact with regularly. So some of the support organizations that we know interact strongly in the paratransit community, getting it to them, and then having not just to passengers, but to social workers and care providers, those sorts of things.
And I know that we've got, at least with some of our trips, people coming from all over Lexington to a few more concentrated destinations, and we placed those clarifications in some of those like common destination spots.
Yeah, and that'll be an important piece as well, is making sure that sort of those common places that we know people are interacting. The senior center is one of them, right? They are a wonderful partner for us, but they're also a resource for our community.
Yeah.
And if the senior center doesn't know about it, is it actually happening? Sometimes feels like the right call. So yeah, places like that, both for staff and participants.
And then that is one of the higher fixed route on-time performances in a while, so that's really great. I think we've been right at like the high 80s, and our goal is 90, so that's right on target. And
Yes. Sorry, go ahead.
No. And thank you for doing this. There's a lot of data that we get every month, and it's like, what is the few most important pieces of data that we should pay attention to? So I do appreciate this. That you
Yeah,
added.
absolutely. This slide will continue to be a work in progress. So, we would love feedback from you all on that to help us understand things that are not just, we want to put things that are important that we want to highlight, but we also want to know what's important for you all to hear from us as well.
And this is saying we had 13,000 people through the weekday in an average week.
On average for the month.
Okay.
But that's a single weekday.
That's a single
sa-
weekday.
A single weekday. Mm-hmm.
And the trips per hour, I don't want to belabor this, but could that be defined as boardings per hour? Okay. And that's system-wide?
Yes.
Correct. That's system-wide for fixed route.
Mm-hmm.
Observed right here.
Yes. And we also saw an increase in the trips per mile as well. So over the miles traveled by the vehicles, there was an increase in trips per mile as well.
And then one last thing, the eligibility process, I know we just switched eligibility vendors.
Yes.
Any feedback on that at the listening sessions?
So I think that the transition happened the same week that we were doing the listening sessions. So that was great. I think that contributed to the volume of questions that we saw. I have a feeling if that transition had not been sort of concurrent, that we wouldn't have seen quite as many questions. But there was a lot of discussion about it. For the eligibility process, we are seeing a lot more feedback from care providers or sort of folks who intercept with individuals who are using paratransit versus the individuals who are applying to ride. We're getting sort of more feedback. They're sort of doing a larger volume, right? Me as an individual is one interaction versus like I may be, if I'm a social worker or, I may be helping with 6 applications.
And then do you guys get, I don't think I see, like a tracker per month of how many new people became eligible for paratransit? And has that increased or decreased or with the new vendor?
So the new vendor started on January 17th. So the data for January is not going to be fabulous. But in February, I can get some more solid data for you guys about how that's changed and the number of folks that we have applying and approved and that sort of thing. We have received regular monthly reporting on that always. But as far as the new vendor goes, we did a grace period for folks. So instead of just saying, oh, your eligibility expires on January 16th, the vendor's changing on the 17th, sorry about your luck. We added a grace period for them through the end of February. So the folks that have fallen out of that grace period, and that was for January and February completely. So we may see we'll see an increase in February, and then we may see an additional increase in March because we sort of extended folks who needed to reapply. So it wouldn't be new, but the volume could potentially change based on those recertifications.
And then besides this just transition, is there any other natural spikes? Like we always see in August a big spike because of X.
Um,
I don't know what that would be, why there would be a spike, but.
UK opening.
Yeah, so there was a slight increase in ridership from December to January. UK came back into session early in the month. I did not look specifically for any spikes, so I don't know.
And that's specifically in eligibility process?
Oh, I'm sorry, not in the
Sorry.
eligibility process.
Yes.
Okay.
So I can't talk about previous, but in the first
In
month
general.
of January, it was 6 approved. However, in the month of February, it was a lot more. So what we have been doing is meeting bi-weekly to assess the progress, and we have a meeting scheduled for Wednesday, so I'll provide additional information.
Okay, yeah, and that, I'm sure as you guys get more data, I was just curious if for some reason eligibility always spikes in April because, I don't know, people break their leg or, that's not the
fair.
best reason, but some reason.
And I don't know if monthly there would be, probably there's intake processes for different facilities and that sort of thing, so there may during the month be a difference, and, you know, we can look at that information from previous eligibility as well.
And then I have one more question before we transition to finances. On the community sessions, I don't know if there wasn't a slide on it, but I know also in February you presented to council on paratransit options, and I didn't see that on here. Maybe it'll pop up on next.
Yes, it will be on next month. So yes, it was the February 6th meeting of Environmental Quality and Public Works, and Councilmember Ellinger and I he did a presentation and I answered questions on microtransit. And so paratransit did come up because microtransit can be utilized by folks who also qualify for paratransit. It is not a solution for paratransit dependent individuals. It's not a solution for fixed route individuals at all times. It's not sort of a one-turn solution for everyone. But yes, I will have more information available, and there is a great community conversation going on that we've been participating in, and I know Fred's been keeping you all up to date on that. So you know, it was a good conversation, and I think we as a community are sort of moving in the right direction to understand, you know, about who we need to serve, how microtransit fills a gap for certain individuals, and then the importance of sustainable funding for a microtransit program, and the importance of maintaining funding or what additional funding could do for the services that we're currently providing.
Thank you.
I have a request.
Of course.
Can we, for on-time performance, do a monthly graph similar to how you do ridership so we can see the trend month to month? Because when first looking at this for paratransit, you know, 76%-ish, and it's higher than the year-to-date, but then I had to go back and look at the month before to see and it was 79 the month before, so it slipped a little bit.
Okay.
You know, it'd be easier for us to follow the trend on that. And my personal opinion is that's probably as important of a metric as anything we look at as far as the riders are concerned.
We'll do that for next month. Do you want that included in the packet or as part of the presentation?
I like to see it in the
In the
packet.
packet? Got it. Will do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning. We are looking at the period ending January 31st. This is 7 months into our fiscal year, and our operating cash at this point is very strong. We we finally had some federal money come in, so you'll see that in February. You will not see that in the January report, but just wanted to let you know that we will have that in February report. Everything looks pretty good on the balance sheet, but I'll be glad to answer any questions. Okay, moving on to the statement of revenue and expenses. Property taxes are looking very good. We're $1 million ahead of where we were this time last year. In November and December, it's hard to tell with timing, but in January we can tell that that we're definitely going to come in, I would say pretty much over budget, what we had talked about. We budgeted for a 3.5% increase, and I think we're going to go over that by a little bit, so that's very, very good to hear. As Emily mentioned, our passenger count is going up, so that makes our passenger revenue go up. We're about 53,000 over where we were this time last year. And our federal funds, like I said, will show up, some of those in next month. For our expenses, we are under budget in almost everything we have, except paratransit, which is 104,000 over budget, which is still pretty good because it's all budgeted on based on how many trips that we have. The dues and subscriptions is over because that's timing, because our APTA dues are due in the fall, and so that one's timing. But everything else is pretty much under budget. And our monthly average diesel cost is $261. We've noticed that it has been going up in the month of February, but our year-to-date average for this fiscal year is $289, and our CNG is remaining steady, about $1.44. So we've been ranging between $1.44 and $1.60 for the last 6 months. So we're very glad about that. But I'll be glad to answer any questions.
More, that's the end of the expenses for the van pool?
Correct.
Do we just leave it there, or do we do a budget amendment?
Either one, we can leave it there, or we can do a budget amendment if you all wish to.
No, that moved to the paratransit expenses, all right?
It's correct.
So,
It's all in the same basic line item. We just
Yeah.
separate those out for you all to see the difference. So it basically shows up in the same line item on the overall expenses.
like logistically, you don't need a budget amendment, yeah.
Any more questions?
Any questions?
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you. As I noted, we lack a quorum to review action items, so those will all be pushed to the next meeting. Fred, I think you noted that none of these are time sensitive, so there's not a need to schedule a special meeting to approve any of those resolutions. Is there a change order report?
There is not.
There is not. Is there any old business?
I would like to let everyone know about the CNG fueling project. As part of our capital projects, we are expecting delivery of the equipment here on March the 4th. We plan to begin construction sometime in April and hope to complete that project by the end of June. So that will effectively double our fueling capacity for CNG vehicles.
And remind me of the location, is it going right next to the one we have?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's the only old business.
In new business?
New business I'm aware of.
Okay. And then share with us about the upcoming EEO program plan.
Yes, that is part of our sort of natural course. Our last EO program plan was 2020, so it is due to be brought before the board, and we'll do that in March, as well as the action items that were on this month's agenda.
Okay. Excellent.
I do also anticipate a closed session next month
Okay.
to talk about the status of paratransit, some of those studies that we've been talking about as a group. I'd like to update the board on those in March.
Great. That sounds good. Anything else for the good of the cause? All right. Then we stand adjourned. Thanks very much,
Thank
everyone.
you, everyone.